We go now to Afghanistan, where urgent rescue efforts are underway after a powerful earthquake overnight devastated communities in the east of the country. More than 800 people have been killed in the magnitude 6.0 quake, but thousands more are injured. And many are now in remote and mountainous areas that are difficult to access. Fears loom that the death toll will continue to rise. The International Rescue Committee is helping those on the ground, and the IRC's country director from Afghanistan, Shireen Ibrahim, joined me earlier from Kabul. We're grateful to you to give us some insight into what is going on the ground there. What have you been hearing so far about really the adversity in trying to get to this area, and how has the response to this emergency been going?
Well, thank you, Paula. Clearly, it's an earthquake of great magnitude by any stretch of the imagination, 6.2 on the Richter scale, hitting Nangarhar province and nearby provinces as well, including Kunar, Lagman, and Nuristan, as well as Kabul. The reason why it's difficult to get to the locations at the current time, well, there are a few. The first is that it's been raining and there have been landslides throughout the locations where the earthquake happened. There's also a massive attempt to evacuate, so people trying to get out fast enough. And of course, all things considered, people trying to get in to help those who are in desperate need as a result of the earthquake. So, a combination of weather conditions and obviously panic that has set in across the entire eastern provinces of Afghanistan.
And who could blame them for being panicked, especially as you said that this is an ongoing emergency, especially given the landslides. You know, this earthquake, I don't have to remind you, comes as U.S. foreign aid to Afghanistan has been slashed. The Trump administration terminated more than $1.7 billion worth of contracts, which, has recently exacerbated food and medical shortages have continued. How would you measure the effect of those cuts on Afghanistan's ability to respond to this tragedy?
So, with the US funding cuts, Paula, what has happened is that the humanitarian crisis that existed prior to this earthquake were only exacerbated. 50% of the humanitarian response prior to January the 20th was funded by the generous people of the United States and the government. Today, that is no more. And with 23 million people in need, clearly there was desperation prior to the earthquake. Today, obviously, without these funds, without these resources, humanitarian actors, the UN, the de facto authorities have all been trying to pull together what scarce resources there are to be able to respond very quickly. I will say that there has been a very quick response. Today, many actors came together to respond in a way that we believe is commensurate to the damage. But clearly, when you have medicines in stock, as IRC does, and you're unable to distribute those medicines because you're waiting for a green light from the US government and its representatives, it makes it even more difficult for organizations and humanitarians like us who are on the ground, who have the needed medicines and supplies, but cannot distribute them.
And you say you're waiting for some kind of a green light from the U.S. administration, and I hear your point that, the response so far, that you're grateful for what it is. But how has all that changed as well under the Taliban and the fact that it is the Taliban right now that is in charge of this response effort?
Well, the reality is that the de facto authorities have been bringing everybody together today to ensure that whatever resources are available are dedicated to the response, the earthquake response. So there have been meetings that have been held, coordination meetings held today. One will be held tomorrow at 2 p.m. all in an effort to ensure that those who are responding are doing so with complementarity rather than with any sort of duplication. The resources are clearly stretched. So all the needs that we are hearing about will likely never be met, but we are starting to get a good picture of the extent of the damage. And hopefully, those who are able to reach those locations will be doing so as early as tomorrow morning. I mean, many have already arrived today, but I believe that the vast majority of the response will start tomorrow.
We're trying to get a measure of how the response may have changed here. I mean, the last time we saw an earthquake of this magnitude was in October 2023. More than 2,000 people died. You know, all of this predated, in fact, the closure of U.S. aid and all of those funding cuts on the part of the U.S. administration. Following the earthquake, how fundamental do you believe these changes are to the response effort and what that effort will look like for the people that desperately need it yesterday, not today?
Well, I think the major change is that the scale will probably be larger. Just today, we've seen a figure from the UN of 800 deaths, 12,000 or so people directly and heavily impacted by this. But the resources are nowhere near what was available at the time of the Herat earthquake that you are referring to. So I believe that. What has really changed is our ability to respond at scale and at the speed that we need. The coordination mechanisms are there, the actors are on the ground. We clearly are trying to pull together whatever we have in terms of resources, but the scale is unmatched by the resources that we need.
And as you said, quite a task in front of you. Can you describe how difficult it is to get to these regions, how remote it is, and how, you know, you really need airlift capacity at this point?
That's correct. So critical cases were airlifted today. This region is a mountainous region. It's very, very difficult to get around these regions on a normal day, let alone a rainy day where there are landslides and where the most impacted communities are very remote. So clearly, airlifting will is an option, and it has been tried today, but it cannot be an option for many of the people in the remote locations. So getting to those locations in some instances will take perhaps 2 to 3 hours by car. If on foot, obviously much longer. But it is quite a difficult trek because of the mountainous nature of the entire eastern geographies of Afghanistan.
Yeah, and you spare a thought for all of those who have just gone through such trauma and are still waiting for help to arrive. Shireen Ibrahim, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paula.